into this, the first villain Disney ever had. It's really getting myself into this big crown.
There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her. Weird.
They're remaking the movie, they just got rid of the dwarves. But they have one token dwarf amongst these magical creatures. You actually just went backwards. You actually just erased the dwarfism side of it. The disability, like we're a disability group, you just erase that whole
queen playing the evil queen. It was pretty amazing.
Lines that they say, like magic mirror on the wall. It was a lot of fun.
Oh my God.
Rachel Zegler has shattered the image of the friendly girl next door with one explosive controversy after another. Everyone expected her to charm audiences in Disney's live-action Snow White, but something went catastrophically wrong. Insiders have laid the blame squarely on her, pointing to fiery clashes, bruised egos, and political brawls. Snow White's box office implosion was jaw-dropping.
Broke out with this news, and I'm very, very, very excited and looking forward.
Controversy in Snow White. The dwarves have been eliminated in the live action.
Yeah.
Now it's Snow White and the 7 magical beings.
Wait, it's 7 and the magical beings.
Yeah,
They won't even say
magical
and the 7
beings.
dwarves.
No, because they're not dwarves. For right now, that's the only jobs that are there.
Part of the first, fairy tale ever told.
Last week was a very big week, objectively a huge week. We had quite a few announcements. It's the first live action film, which is Snow White and the Evil Queen. And that's me, I'm Snow White, which is so fun.
Who wants a movie about true love? What kind of woman do we want out there seeking true love, Eliana? The outrage.
A once promising blockbuster turned into an absolute train wreck. All eyes are now on Zegler, with many insisting that her combative behavior and relentless ambition led Disney down a disastrous path. People thought they were getting a bright new star. Instead, they got a swirling tornado of chaos, accusations, and flat-out hostility that no one saw coming. And the fallout is far from over.
She came out and she said, I apologize. Like, I went too far. But it wasn't.
They say all you have to do to make your wish come true is let it echo, 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 echo.
It's awful, generic. Never mind that the lyrics make no sense at all. All you have to do to make your dream come true is let it echo. Is it like on a metaphor?
Hardcore. They're petrified of some kind of backlash.
I sat through the whole thing. This was really bad. It was extremely leftist on every political dimension: racial politics, sexual politics, class politics, regime politics. Its narrative was cowardly. It was just awful.
From day one, reports poured in that Rachel Zegler carried herself like an invincible queen bee. Castmates Andrew Burnap and Gal Gadot didn't stand a chance. Sources from Page 6 described her attitude as toxic, whispering about her storming in late.
I wanted my money back. It was very disappointing.
Disney deleted Someday My Prince Will Come and made a modernized feminist alternative.
Pretending like Rachel Zegler is the first of them all when she looks like Lord Farquaad in the film.
It's got extra musical numbers that are incredibly unnecessary that really add to that runtime. And let me go ahead and let you know that they're absolutely atrocious.
No one on the right side of America can stand the star of this movie.
This is just so typical of the left. The progressives always finding a way to find their way back to doing something not progressive. Rachel Zegler, like so many kids raised on TikTok, she's all for infantata is the only global solution.
Barking orders and demanding special treatment. Critics who used to praise her for her vocal talent and youthful sparkle were stunned by claims that she was acting like a hardened diva. Fights erupted in front of the cameras, halting rehearsals and shredding morale. People said the tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Zegler allegedly confronted Burnap over creative differences.
Doing catastrophically. They spent $300 million and it currently has a 2.2 out of 10 rating on IMDb.
The movie has a major identity crisis.
Now, I'm guessing that she's not married. I'm guessing that she doesn't have kids. The movie is a complete disaster, by the way. The new Disney boss babe, who is Rachel Zegler, the inverse of...
Have they ever thought about maybe like a little bit of vulnerability study, opposition research, that sort of thing, before you go and hire some Zoomer who's a lunatic?
So she comes off as an insufferable, whiny brat.
Slamming his suggestions and brushing off the director's attempts at peace. This negativity trickled down to the crew, who started complaining that they'd never dealt with so much drama on a Disney set. Gossip soared. fueling social media chatter about meltdown after meltdown. By the time the production team tried to do damage control, the damage had already been done. Word even spread that producers held emergency meetings, desperate to stop the chaos before it sank the entire film.
They spent $170 million to make the thing, and it had the lowest opening, under $50 million, of any of these live-action Disney remakes that they've ever had.
Rachel Zegler is extraordinarily woke, but she's woke in a way that's quite deranged.
And you know the saying, go woke, get broke, and Disney's going to lose money on this movie, and I believe it only made less than $1 million.
So apparently, according to them and according to the writers of Snow White, women can't even want to be in love anymore.
But Zegler refused to budge on her demands, fueling an environment of simmering hostility. Some said she thrived on it, relishing every second of the controversy. And as if the arguments weren't enough, there was a political bomb waiting to detonate. But that wasn't the whole story. Behind the scenes, Rachel Zegler didn't just clash over script rewrites or costume tweaks. She also had a monumental, ideological face-off with Gal Gadot. Everyone knows Gadot stands firm with Israel, speaking out regularly in support of her homeland. Zegler, however, leans pro-Palestinian, which triggered explosive encounters between them. Eyewitnesses claimed they'd throw pointed barbs at each other in the makeup trailer, turning even simple morning routines into tense standoffs. Then it spilled into the open. Tabloids like Teen Vogue and Vanity Fair hopped on the story, breathlessly, reporting on insider leaks about screaming matches so loud they could be heard across the set. Social media erupted with opinions. Some rallied behind Zegler's perspective, praising her outspoken stance. Others defended Gadot, arguing that Zegler had crossed the line into disrespect. In the swirl of all this, filming slowed to a crawl. The friction between these two actresses became the focal point of endless headlines. Directors tried to pivot attention back to the movie's storyline, but the damage was done. Everyone was talking about the simmering feud, overshadowing any positive buzz. And what happened next would shock everyone. When Snow White finally arrived in theaters, the numbers were catastrophic. Its domestic take barely scraped $43 million, a far cry from the mind-blowing $250 million budget. Critics called it the biggest financial flop in Disney's modern era. Fans balked at shelling out money for a film mired in ugly controversies. Industry analysts hammered it as the year's biggest cautionary tale. People pointed to the never-ending negative press. Why would families rush to see a fairy tale? Marred by raging on-set hostility and political mudslinging, some speculated that word of mouth was toxic. Others believed the marketing campaign was doomed from the start. Every time Disney tried to hype the film, a new scandal erupted. Yet the real heartbreak for Disney was how swiftly the public turned its back. The House of Mouse, synonymous with wholesome magic, seemed powerless as the fiasco steamrolled any attempt at damage control. Meanwhile, journalists feasted on the meltdown. The story of Zegler's alleged tantrums and unprofessionalism overshadowed any critical discussion about the film's plot or special effects. But the aftermath of that disastrous opening weekend was even more severe. Faced with catastrophic losses, Disney raced to salvage whatever was left of its reputation. According to sources in Vanity Fair, executives huddled behind closed doors, fuming over Zegler's supposed role in the downfall. Shockwaves reverberated through Disney's entire live-action pipeline. The immediate casualty? Their planned live-action remake of Tangled was put on indefinite pause. Rumors circulated that top brass demanded a re-evaluation of the entire blueprint for retelling Disney classics. Could it be that the brand's once reliable strategy, taking a beloved animated gem and producing a glossy, big-budget remake, was fatally flawed? Or did the fiasco boil down to Zegler's behind-the-scenes rampage? Some insiders at Page 6 said she was singled out as the primary scapegoat, with executives privately branding her an uncontrollable liability. Whatever the truth, Disney hammered the brakes on future projects, unwilling to risk repeating this monstrous flop. Staff morale plummeted. The entertainment giant, once an unshakable force, now seemed rattled by the humiliating performance of a flagship film. Just when they thought they'd reached rock bottom, public outrage magnified their crisis tenfold. But the reaction from fans was equally damning. Within hours of Snow White bombing at the box office, social media was flooded with posts blaming Rachel Zegler. Hashtags like #Zegler drama and Blame Rachel soared to trending status. Outspoken critics accused her of sinking a classic with her disrespectful attitude and reckless disregard for co-stars. Some fans declared they'd never watch another project featuring her again. Prominent voices joined the condemnation. Jonah Platt, son of famed producer Mark Platt, publicly criticized Zegler's conduct. although details of his direct experiences were vague. His words were unyielding, calling her behavior immature and harmful to the entire production. Tabloids across the board, New York Post, OK Magazine, even Teen Vogue, snapped up the story, shining a harsher spotlight on Zegler's alleged arrogance. Meanwhile, longtime Disney devotees were simply heartbroken. They remembered Zegler's star-making turn in West Side Story and couldn't reconcile that bright-eyed performer with the chaos now dragging the legendary Snow White legacy through the mud. A film that was supposed to be a triumphant celebration of a classic, fairy tale became infamous for behind-the-scenes wars, but the storm just kept growing. Rachel Zegler tried to salvage her reputation through carefully worded apologies. She posted lengthy statements on social media, insisting she never intended to offend anyone. She called the allegations unfair and insisted she was misunderstood. But fans weren't buying it. Comment sections erupted with mockery and anger, painting her as insincere and deflecting blame. She then switched tactics, appearing in interviews where she claimed the negativity was fueled by jealous individuals, seeking to tarnish her success. But that only triggered more backlash. Critics accused her of refusing to own her actions. The press splashed every defensive word across headlines, fueling the notion that Zegler was either oblivious or indifferent to the destruction around her. Even attempts to pivot the conversation back to her vocal talents or philanthropic interests fell flat. The public saw her as the main culprit in Disney's biggest bomb in years. Her protestations seemed too little, too late. The more she spoke, the more convinced people became that she was avoiding responsibility. But the consequences of this scandal were about to strike a deeper chord. In Hollywood, reputations can crumble fast. Insiders whispered that Disney wants no further dealings with Rachel Zegler, determined to cut ties quietly but definitively. Executives allegedly demanded that her name be removed from consideration for upcoming projects, fueling speculation that her shot at the big leagues might be fleeting. Other studios also took notice. Gossip circulated that major production houses were reluctant to cast someone so polarizing. While fans initially saw her as an exciting newcomer poised to dominate cinema, the Snow White catastrophe changed everything. Industry bigwigs privately expressed concerns about whether her personal views and rumored bad attitude would hamper future projects. At the same time, some corners of the internet still rallied behind her. They insisted that punishing Zegler for her boldness was unfair. Yet the growing chorus of critics couldn't be ignored. Her name was now synonymous with one of Disney's grandest flops, forever etched into the annals of cinematic cautionary: Tales. And as her career wavered, an even broader shift was happening in Hollywood. Before Snow White unraveled into one of the most expensive faceplants in recent memory, Hollywood had been riding high on the nostalgia cash cow. The formula was too tempting to resist. Take a beloved animated gem, slap on a modern coat of CGI, cast a few household names, and wait for the billion-dollar box office returns to roll in. It worked with Beauty and the Beast. It worked with The Lion King. Studios assumed audiences would blindly show up no matter who was starring, because who could resist seeing their childhood memories come to life in live action? But then came Rachel Zegler, and suddenly, everything changed. The backlash didn't just hit Disney. It shook the entire industry. Executives across town slammed the brakes on their remake pipelines, second-guessing casting decisions, tone, messaging, and even the wisdom of retelling these stories in the first place. The days of banking on brand recognition alone were over. Now, studios were scrambling to reevaluate whether attaching controversial, self-righteous young stars to iconic IPs was worth the fallout. Zegler wasn't just a lesson, she was a full-blown warning sign. The internal chatter was brutal. Insiders reported that meetings at major production houses shifted tone overnight. Talent managers were told to vet not just resumes and acting chops, but political history, social media patterns, and public temperament. No one wanted another Rachel Zegler situation. A lead actor who hijacks press tours with divisive commentary, slams the original story she's starring in, and alienates the core fan base before the movie even premieres. This wasn't just about bad press, it was about bottom-line destruction. And audiences were watching too. The same viewers who once lined up with popcorn and excitement now voiced nothing but fatigue and frustration. A growing chorus of longtime Disney fans, those who had grown up with the originals, took to forums, TikTok, and YouTube, calling the latest batch of remakes lazy, soulless, and corporate propaganda wrapped in glitter. They weren't just disappointed by Snow White's failure, they were enraged by what it symbolized: A billion-dollar empire so out of touch, it thought it could survive on nostalgia and chaos alone. Then came the deeper accusations that Disney had sold out storytelling for social signaling. Many fans zeroed in on the casting choices, especially Zegler, accusing the studio of prioritizing performative inclusivity over actual substance. And when Zegler herself openly mocked the original 1937 Snow White, dismissing the iconic romance and calling the prince a creep, the backlash turned volcanic. People felt betrayed, not just by her, but by Disney for letting it happen. This was supposed to be a fairy tale. Instead, it turned into a nightmare with a moral no one asked for. Other studios felt the ripple effect immediately. Warner Brothers, Universal, and even Netflix reportedly hit pause on multiple remakes in development. The conversations changed from, "Who's our next star?" to, "Are we sure we want to make this at all?" And suddenly, older actresses who had once been passed over for not fitting the Gen Z activist mold were getting second looks. Industry whispers said the pendulum was swinging back toward charisma, discipline, and respect for the craft. Meanwhile, Disney itself was spinning. Rumors of internal chaos surfaced, with some alleging a quiet civil war between traditionalists and the new wave of executives who had steered the studio. Into this mess, some longtime creatives privately admitted they were embarrassed by what the brand had become. Meetings reportedly devolved into shouting matches about casting oversight, lack of script quality, and the unchecked egos of rising stars. And at the center of every conversation, Rachel Zegler. There was talk, allegedly, that Disney might restructure its entire live-action division. Whispers of high-profile firings began circulating on industry boards. Some speculated that multiple executives were already on borrowed time, and that a creative overhaul was being fast-tracked to avoid another multi-million-dollar debacle. There were even murmurs that Bob Iger himself was furious, and that the Snow White disaster had become a personal embarrassment at the highest levels of the company. Even stockholders weren't immune. When quarterly reports showed the financial damage from Snow White's crash landing, investor confidence shook. Some questioned whether Disney was too busy chasing headlines to notice they were hemorrhaging audience trust. The company's identity crisis had gone public, and everyone from financial analysts to soccer moms knew it. And it didn't stop there. The Zegler effect bled into upcoming productions. Talent agents began warning their clients to shut up and act. PR teams instituted tighter controls, canceling press tours for certain films to avoid another scandal explosion. And fans, once the lifeblood of these projects, started pushing back harder. They were no longer afraid to boycott, criticize, or walk away completely. The magic was broken, and no one seemed to know how to put it back together. The industry is now standing at a crossroad. Do studios double down and continue pushing loud, controversial stars into the spotlight, hoping their Twitter virality will translate to ticket sales? Or do they take a step back and remember what actually built these empires? Storytelling, passion, and audience respect. Because make no mistake, Snow White wasn't just a flop. It was a symptom of something much deeper. What does this mean for future remakes or for Zegler herself? Only time will reveal the next chapter. But one thing is absolutely certain. The shockwaves from this debacle will continue to reverberate. And everyone involved, especially Rachel Zegler, will have to live with the consequences of a once glittering opportunity turned into a relentless storm of controversy. The questions will linger, the debates will rage on, and Hollywood will never look at a fairy tale adaptation the same way again.